Delighted to welcome you to a joint House and Senate Natural Resources and Energy hearing on energy siting with a focus on solar. Your participation is welcome and essential, and it's great to see such a great turnout. If you haven't done this before, so let me just review the rules of the road and logistics for tonight. It's a bit like town meeting for speakers. You know, be polite, address the panel. We're not debating with each other or anything. For the audience, please, no outbursts, clapping, anything else. It helps us keep on moving, and in terms of keeping on moving, each speaker will get 2 minutes, and then we have a timer here. We'll tell you your time is up. Please submit written testimony if you have longer remarks, or even if you have just your 2 minutes of remarks. We will be posting all the comments on the committee website. So in order to share the thinking more broadly around the state. We're taking testimony for 2 hours, and we'll stop on time. Given that we have 120 minutes, and to ensure that everyone is treated fairly in this process, we are doing people who have signed up. We've taken 60 names, 2 hours worth of names, and we're doing a random draw. So Representative Ellis will read off who's up next, and then the 2 people after that, so that you can get yourself steeled to come up to the front, or excited, or whatever it is. Out of respect for everyone else who's coming, who's here, given the limited time, please stick with a 2-minute limit. We'll be giving you a signal. Again, written testimony to Committee Assistant Katie Pickens will be great, because it will help us post what we have so that we can share it on the website. And if you know people who couldn't make it here tonight and they're still interested, we'll be accepting comments beyond this evening. The other one last note is, sometimes when we have such hearings, we're talking about a bill. In this case, we're here this evening to talk about an issue. We'd like to hear your thoughts about what's working well and not so well in the world of developing renewable energy in Vermont, the focus on solar siting. So I hope you'll stay on topic. And with that, I think that's it for setup, other than I'd love to start with Representative Olson and go have everyone here on the 2 committees introduce themselves, so you'll know who you're speaking with this evening.
Great, thank you, Chairman. Representative Oliver Olson, representing the towns of Jamaica, Londonderry, Stratton, Weston, and Whitehall in the southern part of the state.
Representative Robin Chestnut Tangerine from Rutland Bennington District, representing the towns of Tinmouth, Middletown Springs, Pollock, Wells, and Rupert.
Mariana Gamache, I'm from Franklin 4, representing the towns of Sheldon and Swanton.
I'm Mike Hebert from Wyndham 1, and I represent Guilford and Vernon.
Bob Forgeiss, representative from Springfield.
I'm Representative Rebecca Ellis. I represent Waterbury, Huntington, and Bolton.
Chris Bray from Addison County.
Diane Snelling from Chittenden County.
Brian Campion, Bennington County and Wilmington.
Senator Rogers, Essex Orleans.
Representative Marvin White from Ferrisburg and Addison 3 District.
I'm Marcel, and I represent the South End section of Wilmington.
I'm Representative Mike Antotchka, and I represent Charlotte, part of Heinsberg.
Tony Klein, represent East Montpelier and Middlesex, and chair of the House Natural Resources and Energy.
Okay, with that, Representative Ellis, can you kick us off, please?
Sure, so I'm randomly drawing names. The first name is John McGuire, followed by Bill Kueck and Melanie Heiser.
Much.
Good evening. Glad I got to pick it for 4 hours. Good evening. My name is John McGuire, and I represent my family who own property that abuts the proposed siting of the 150 kilowatt solar field under construction at Mile Point in Ferrisburg, Vermont. The application to construct this field was submitted by Basin Harbor Club. The proposed field contains 25 solar tracking panels that are each the size of 2 UPS trucks mounted on 25-foot poles. I'm not here to discuss the merits of solar energy. Myself, my family, and many of our neighbors are huge proponents of solar energy. What I am here to present to this committee is the grave concern we have for the process and criteria by which fast-tracked projects are handled by the Public Service Board. Any solar project that is under 150 kilowatts is currently fast-tracked. Fast-track projects are not required to have a public hearing, and site visits to that are not required as well. Therefore, a solar field the size of 25 massive panels can receive a rubber stamp approval with incredibly minimal oversight. This, in my opinion, puts one of Vermont's greatest resources, its natural resources, at great risk. The site at Mile Point went up with astonishing speed and little regard to any of the nearby properties. I was personally shocked that a project of this magnitude could be pushed through approvals with such disregard to dissenting opinions and failure to review such facts by adjoining landowners. My family made several comments to the Public Service Board regarding impacts to Lake Champlain, historic properties, as well as solar glare issues that pilots would encounter when landing at the airport next door. The solar glare analysis provided by the applicant was factually incorrect for the wrong runway, and still the Public Service Board pushed this through. The applicant incorrectly stated on the application that no historic homes were in close proximity. This too was absolutely incorrect, yet it still went forward. In closing, solar energy is important. However, when it comes to fast-track projects, more oversight and attention to the siting of such projects is desperately needed. I urge the committee members to stop the project at Mile Point.
Next we have Phil Puek, followed by Melanie Pizer and Jeff Forward.
Hi, I'm Phil Pouch. Thank the committee for this opportunity. It's much appreciated. I'm employed in the renewable energy industry. I've been in manufacturing for 30 plus years, and for the last 10 years I've been in renewable energy. I'm also a Heinsberg Select Board member. I'd like to talk about the manufacturing. 20 years I've worked for some very fine companies in Vermont, but those companies have dwindled a bit, and in one case, one of the companies I worked for went out of state. Renewable energy jobs are strong, good jobs for Vermonters. And as a select board member, certainly, I get the idea of local control. I mean, that's, part of the job. And we had the gas pipeline come through Heinsberg, or the permitting come through. And we had a full house in our town hall looking for local control. And even though it wasn't something I wanted to have, I understand that the Public Service Board process is necessary to determine public good. And we cannot, as select board members or town members, really understand public good because we can't really see outside of our borders. I think it's a mistake to put additional restrictions on solar energy. I believe they're deemed a public good. We have state policies stating so, and we have state goals stating they're public good. They're, it's clean, renewable energy, it's cost effective, has very low environmental impact, and it keeps dollars within our communities. I think solar's success, recent success, has made it a target of some interest who really like the status quo and don't see the need to change. And I do think that we need to change. So why did I come and drive here to come and talk to you? I really came because I believe climate change is real, it's a moral issue, and it's the real public good. Thank you very much.
Next we have Melanie Pizer, followed by Jeff Forward and Jenny Stevens.
Sorry. Okay. No.
Hi, my name is Melanie Pizer. I am a resident of Moncton, and while I have a lot less experience in dealing with solar projects, I have been dealing with the pipeline potentially coming through my family's property. I simply want to make a very quick plea. I wasn't expecting to be right at the front of the line, but that there be local input into this process. I think it's extremely important. It's important for accountability reasons. The fact is that when neighbors have to talk to neighbors about the impact of a project, whether it's solar, a pipeline, or anything else, the conversation changes dramatically. It is a lot easier to have a conversation at the state level at which most neighbors cannot attend, that most neighbors do not understand, and about which most neighbors will not have information when these decisions are made. And I think it is imperative that those conversations happen at the local level. I think it changes the nature of them, it changes the level of transparency, and it changes the understanding of people in terms of what's happening with these projects. The second thing I wanted to say is that I think in Vermont in general, there is woefully lacking information about the process and about people's rights in the process. A statute is not enough. People need to have easily understood information that is accessible, whether that's online or in their local town halls, that explains to them what the process is, what their rights are under the process, what compensation is available to them, and what the implications are long-term for them of any energy project that is happening that will affect their property or affect their communities. I think until Vermont does that and makes the process understandable to the average person doesn't have to spend 400 hours to study a topic and figure out what the implications are for him or her or his or her family or community, the process is going to be broken in Vermont. I can tell you I have a law degree. I've been working on administrative justice issues for my entire career, and it took me months to figure out how to work within the Public Service Board process. I hope you will work on making it local, informative, and fair.
Next we have Jeff Forward, followed by Jenny Stevens and Jordana Jusufman.
Hello, thank you very much for taking our testimony. My name is Jeff Forward. I live on a 200-year-old farm in Richmond, Vermont. I have a 25 kilowatt group net meter solar project that I've built on my farm. One of the reasons why my wife and I invested in this project is that we believe strongly in community. And we hope that this project will help build community amongst our neighbors. And I have to say, I feel it's worked. Twice a year, that'll be soon, it's probably this next coming week, we gather our group members to change the orientation of our panels. And we give them hot chocolate and muffins, and we physically harvest the sun. It feels like harvesting the sun, kind of bringing in trees. Personally, I think my project looks beautiful. Juxtaposed against my historic home, I think it's a beautiful project. However, not all of my neighbors agree with me. Not even all of my group members agreed with me when we first put it in. In fact, I had to put $1,000 worth of trees on my property line to shield it from my neighbor. However, I get it. I understand change is hard. A changing landscape is a difficult thing for many people to accept, but change we must. We're going to change whether we want to or not. And I believe that it's imperative that we do everything we can to try to mitigate the worst aspects of climate change. And I believe projects like this, distributed energy projects throughout the state, are what's necessary to mitigate the worst aspects of climate change. So I would hope you would take that into consideration as you consider changes to the process. Because I think I had to contact all of my neighbors before I did my project as part of the Public Service Board project, even for a small project. And I feel like it now. So thank you very much.
Next we have Jenny Stevens, followed by Jordana Jusufman and David Fucci.
I'm a professor at the University of Vermont with expertise in climate change and renewable energy innovation. And as a faculty member, I have a joint appointment in the Rubenstein School of Environment and Natural Resources and the College of Engineering and Mathematical Sciences. And I'm new to Vermont this year. Urgency in responding to the growing threats of climate change requires that the state of Vermont accelerate and encourage renewable energy deployment. The state should not take steps that could create additional barriers that could slow down solar development. Solar energy offers clean electricity that is essential for reducing greenhouse gas emissions, building more resilient, stable, and local energy systems. One challenge of the development of renewable energy is that many of us are not accustomed to seeing our energy infrastructure on our landscape. We plug in our computers and our phones, but we do not know where the electricity is coming from, and often it has been coming from far away, large-scale power plants. But with the powerful opportunities and benefits of local, distributed, clean, renewable energy right here in Vermont, we now have to get familiar with solar installations on our landscape as we connect our energy use with local generation. So to maintain its leadership in energy innovation, to move away from fossil fuel reliance, and to expand job opportunities in renewable energy, the state of Vermont needs to accept, facilitate, support, and encourage renewable energy projects, in particular solar energy. Thank you.
Next we have Georgiana Isignan, followed by David Fucci and Steve Wright.
Good evening. My name is Jordana Busiman, really close. And I am a Vermont Law School graduate who was fortunate to actually stay in the state where I wanted to remain because I found a job in the renewable energy industry. Took me a couple of years to get there, and when I did, I felt like the most lucky graduate from the law school. So my familiarity since coming into the industry has been with permitting projects that are 500 kilowatts and larger. So in my experience, the process as is really quite onerous. It's rigorous for developers, even prior to submitting a 45-day notice, which does go to local municipalities, to planning commissions, to select board members, to neighbors. We spend months doing due diligence at the site to ensure that the project location is a good one, and we work with a lot of experts to make that determination. So I think that we need to be very cautious when we proceed in amending a process that I believe already functions that already functions well and is quite rigorous. If we do make the process more challenging, what we stand to lose are the following: jobs, tax, electricity prices that are going to go down as we bring in more renewable projects online, local, offsetting the distribution and transmission charges with local distributed generation, and that's not even talking about the effects of climate change mitigation.
Next we have David Fucci, followed by Steve Wright and Annette Smith.
Thank you. My name is Dave Fucci, and I represent a group called Vermonters for Responsible Solar. So, our group is probably the only group in this room that has taken on the process of opposing a solar project to the PSB and kept the project at bay for almost 20 years. Also, and sadly to say, the only group naive enough to actually think that we would have to be treated with some fairness and justice associated with this process. There is no consideration given to individuals, municipalities, or regions, as we can attest. Our group and our town's 2-year odyssey with the process got absolutely no consideration at all. It was as if we didn't even exist. Sure, the PSB went through the motions, but in the end, according to their decision, complaints can't be addressed since as a neighbor, you are not considered an average Vermonter. And as the town, your siting regulations you put into place have no standing with the board. They, the PSB, state that the average Vermonter is only the people driving by such projects, and these projects do not offend these people. I think they are sorely mistaken. I would also like to interject that a responsible solar developer looked at the Cold River site and said there was no way he would pursue this project. As he stated, he would not do this to this neighborhood, as this was a totally wrong site. I would advise any other party thinking that they are going to be treated fairly by the PSB in the process to forget about it. Save your time, money, and energy, and know the only options available to you are to either purchase the land at 3 times what it's worth, I might add, before the solar company does, or sell your home at a considerable loss, if you can sell it at all, and move. I know these words of advice are met with great pleasure from the solar developers in this room, as the cards are stacked 100% in their favor. Maybe you solar developers should rethink your policies, because if you continue on your current path, you may not like the outcome. As a third-generation Vermonter who will be joining the exodus of others who have left this state we so much loved at one time, we must ask what happened to the state that once championed for the rights of individuals over profits of companies who are only seeing green. And by green, I mean the color of money. Unless new rules are adopted by the legislature to put some balance in this process, our state will become known as the green metal state instead of the green mountain state.
Thank you very much.
And tourism, our #1 income producer, will become a fading memory.
Next is Steve Bright, followed by Annette Smith and Caleb Elder.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's great to see you folks gathered yet again in a momentous event in room 11. Mr. Chair, I have a question, and I hope it's not unseemly or rude. Is it appropriate for the committees to have speakers to identify whether or not they have direct financial interest in the industry we're discussing?
Yes.
Or not? Speakers. No, not the panel.
I invite any speaker who comes up tonight to say their name, where they're from, and if they have an affiliation or not. We wouldn't require disclosure of if you have an interest. The opinions are what we're interested in hearing, not the messenger of those opinions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Steve Wright. I'm from Craftsbury. I've been in Craftsbury for almost 50 years. I know that doesn't qualify me as that magic thing called a real Vermonter, but I'm okay with that. I have one piece of information. I'm retired, Mr. Chair, from the National Wildlife Federation, from where I worked for 8 years as a climate change educator. My professional background is in aquatic biology. I have 3 points wrapped within 2 contexts. The first context is to hang on to what we have. And what we have is an incredible assemblage of healthy ecosystems. It is those ecosystems that allow us to eat, sleep, breathe, reproduce, and other mammalian functions.
Thank you.
Can you please submit your written testimony so the committee can hear your full remarks?
I'd be happy to, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much.
I do have copies. I recommend the abstract.
Thank you.
Next, we have Annette Smith, followed by Caleb Elder and Ann Hogan.
Thank you. My name is Annette Smith. I'm Executive Director of Vermonters for Clean Environment. I live in Danby. I've lived off-grid with solar for 25 years. I'm a big fan of solar. I want to first start by answering your question, your first question with regard to solar development, citing how well is the current PSB approval process working in terms of achieving the state's energy goals. Vermont has no renewable energy goals in statute. Vermont has a comprehensive energy plan that is not in statute that has a goal of 90% renewables by 2050. The current PSB process is not working to achieve the CEP's goals. The current PSB approval process is working very well in terms of achieving Massachusetts and Connecticut's energy goals as required by their renewable portfolio standards. I will submit the rest of the answers to your questions in writing. Now I'm going to switch to the fact that we now have 2 separate standards for land use. We have the PSB standard and the Active 50 standard. The PSB has no front door. There's nobody to talk to who can answer questions. Active 50 has a district coordinator in each region who talks to the public and answers questions. The PSB requires a written motion to intervene along with a notice of appearance and certificate of service in order to participate. Active 50 enables citizens to come to a pre-hearing conference and seek party status by telling the district commission what their interests are. The PSB requires regional and municipal planning commissions and select boards to, the PSB has a website that posts only the petition filed by the applicant but rarely post filings by any other parties. Act 250 has a website with a database that posts all the filings in a case. The PSB has no enforcement capabilities. Act 250 has a dedicated enforcement officer. The PSB gives due consideration to regional and municipal plans and gives no consideration to zoning bylaws. Act 250 must find compliance with regional and municipal plans and zoning bylaws before issuing a permit. The PSB has no statutory requirement to consider impacts to prime agricultural soils. Act 250 has a requirement that impacts to prime agricultural soils must be mitigated by conserving prime agricultural soils elsewhere by a predetermined ratio. The PSB permits development above 2,500 feet. Act 250 does not allow development above 2,500 feet. And I have some more announcements in writing.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next we have Caleb Elder, followed by Ann Hogan, and then Pat Sagui. Caleb Elder. I think we'll proceed. So next we have Ann Hogan, followed by Pat Sagui, and then Keith Ballot.
Good evening, and thank you for this opportunity to testify. My name is Ann Hogan, and I'm here on behalf of the town of Shelburne. Shelburne's position on the siting of solar energy facilities subject to the Public Service Board review process is this. The permitting system is overwhelmingly one-sided in favor of the state, and a fairer balancing of state and municipal voices and interests needs to be heard. Shelburne's town plan supports energy diversification, and we assert here that the state's twin goals of increasing the availability of renewable energy and of decreasing reliance on fossil fuels is being met. According to the data provided by Vermont Sustainable Jobs Fund, Shelburne alone has close to 70 solar installations and has 2,700 kilowatt solar generating capacity. However, many of us in the town feel that municipalities must have a greater say in the Section 248 review process. To address how the existing law might be changed to correct this imbalance, Shelburne believes that towns and cities must have the authority to request technical details regarding proposed solar facilities in their community, authority to require the PSB to conduct a public hearing in their community, authority to appear and participate in any application seeking a certificate of public good in their community, and finally, the PSB must show substantial deference to any specific mandatory provisions contained in the municipality's comprehensive plan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Pat Sagui, followed by Keith Ballot, and then Alan Pierce.
Hello, my name is Pat Sagui, and I'm a resident of Westfield. And I just have one very small but maybe very valuable suggestion, and that is that without a grasp of our capacity to produce a certain amount of energy, we really can't make these decisions about siting. And I would like to call your attention to numbers from the National Renewable Energy Lab. They're about a year old now, and they estimated that just the rooftop solar capacity for the northeast region of the United States is about 76 gigawatts, and that's a big number, and it happens that that's about what we use now in New York and New England total. So, and if that's just on rooftop, then what that tells me is that we have a lot of opportunity to be incredibly selective about where we site these facilities, and that the The data simply does not support build more everywhere, anywhere. We have options here. And so that is what I offer to you, to explore that some more and to look at this idea of what our real capacity is, and that in the spirit of Act 250, that we can make this shift and still preserve our land stewardship values.
Next, we have Keith Ballack, followed by Alan Pierce, and then Paul Bruhoff.
Hi, I'm Keith Ballack. I live in Sheffield. I'm Vice Chair of the Sheffield Planning Commission. I'm also on the Caledonia County Democratic Committee as a committeeman. I want to read something from the Vermont Democratic Party platform, the energy section, that the transition to low-impact renewable energy while considering the immediate and long-term environmental and human health impacts. The Energy Committee here, I think, needs to decipher what really is low impact and renewable and what is just nothing more than big energy masquerading as green energy, which I see some of this, I mean, as far as the environmental impacts. Remember, the environmental court has been removed from the siting process. There's yet to be any oversight by the Vermont Department of Health or any data collection from visits to homes from families living next to industrial wind projects. Suffering noise, people have been forced from their home. A number of people, including my neighbor, had a couple of meetings to react to the Energy Siting Commission, if you remember that, 2 years ago. There was recommendations. The responses from the Energy Committee Chair, Tony Klein, was the following. I don't know why we're all here. This is a waste of time, was one. Another one was, I'm not here to listen to the neighbors. This issue has been swept under the carpet and ignored for quite some time now. The Caledonia County Democratic Committee has passed a resolution along with Orleans, Windham, and Lamoille counties asking the legislature to address the siting concerns with industrial-scale wind projects on sensitive, high elevations. 2 more counties are also considering doing this. Last Saturday, the Vermont State Democratic Committee took up the same resolution. One of the reasons it didn't pass was that some of the people in the room were convinced that something will actually happen from this hearing here tonight. They were assured by our Vice Chair. This remains to be seen. I hope you'll take more citizen input and less from the energy lobbyists. Remember, the misinformation the PSB was fed by the developer on noise issues, CO2 reductions, and power output, which has been 20 to 30% below the predictions. You need to look at ISO New England for the real facts, not the companies that own the projects, because you're going to get a whole different story.
Next is Alan Pierce, followed by Paul Bruhoff and Philip Allen.
Good evening. My name is Alan Pierce. I live in Duxbury, and I'm a member of Waterbury LEAP, which is the Town Energy Committee for Duxbury and Waterbury. In 2013 and 2014, we assisted our town in siting 3 community-scale renewable energy projects, 35 kilowatt array on the municipal building, 150 kilowatts for the middle school, and a 500 kilowatt array for the village. We reviewed over 30 potential sites. One and only one site was suitable for the 500 kilowatt array, which was a large parcel of village-owned land. One and only one site was suitable for the middle school, which was 6/10 of an acre on the school-owned land. And one and only one site was suitable for the municipal building, and that was the rooftop. So we learned firsthand what the barriers are to siting renewable energy in Vermont are, and those barriers are formidable. The first major barrier and challenge is 3-phase power lines. Most 150 kilowatt arrays and 500 kilowatts, all 500 kilowatt systems must be connected to a 3-phase power line. These power lines are scarce throughout Vermont and scarcer still in Waterbury. In Duxbury, we have 31 miles of road and half a mile of 3-phase line. That means there's only one site and one site only for a 500 kilowatt array for community solar in Duxbury. The second barrier is finding suitable land. Land must be flat, open, south-facing, outside of floodplain, outside of historical districts, with low agricultural value and low economic value. Our town and Waterbury Leap are committed to achieving the goals set out in the Vermont Comprehensive Energy Plan. It is very difficult to find parcels of land that can support community-scale arrays. It is the major barrier to achieving our energy goals. Any additional barriers to siting in the forms of setbacks, for example, will likely make community-scale renewable energy all but impossible in Vermont. Thank you.
Next is Paul Ruha, followed by Philip Allen, and then Jerry Mullen.
My name is Paul Ruha. I live in the town of Sutton. I'm the planning chair for our town, and my title this past is prologue. My property abuts the Sheffield wind project, and the nearest turbine is about 1,100 feet from my property boundary. My house is a mile downwind from the project, and as such, I'm frequently aware of and annoyed by both the noise and the visual impact of the project. Since November 2002, when the first Met Tower was erected on Hardscrabble Mountain without a PSP permit, I have participated in every public service docket available to me. At no time during this period has my involvement made a perceptible difference in any outcome. It has been as if I and the experts I retained to testify had not even been present in all the hearings, court proceedings, and public meetings. Further, the votes of Barton and Sutton towns about the project were ignored, and even the direction of the Northeastern Vermont Development Association's regional plan was dismissed. In their decision at the end of docket 7156 proceedings, the Public Service Board ignored statutory direction to provide reliably available electrical power at least cost. At that time, Vermont's electric power supply relied less than 1% on fossil fuel produced power, and since then Vermont has lost major suppliers of emission-free nuclear and hydropower as it switched to expensive, unreliably available wind and solar power, which must be fully backed up by coal and natural gas generation. In order to meet the state's energy goals, a much better option would have been to renegotiate our long-term baseload hydropower contracts at much more favorable rates with our Canadian neighbors. The current process serves merchant wind and solar power developers exceedingly well at the expense of the citizens of Vermont. I have further remarks for you.
Next is Philip Allen, followed by Jerry Mullen and Kate Cole.
My name is Philip Allen, and I'm a Rutland Town resident and co-owner of Same Son of Vermont, which is of the city of Rutland. The solar siting standards began for Rutland Town as an attempt to stop the 2.3 megawatt array on Cold River Road. I attended many of the meetings leading up to the siting standards. It's important to know that in Rutland Town, at every select board meeting, the majority of the room were for the project and for solar in general. The only vote that's ever taken place in Rutland Town regarding solar was a ballot initiative for the town to commit to a $130,000 bond to solarize the Rutland Town School. It passed 1,100 votes to 800 votes approximately. Rutland Town was asked to pay for solar, and we did, and that solar array is 100% visible. The Cold River Road piece of land in Rutland Town had been on the market for more than 8 years. Rutland Town is unzoned, and in the regional plan going back to the 1970s, it is designated as an industrial site. There's a dump across the street from the site. There are a few people who live near the site who don't want to see it there, and I understand that. And they came up with the money and the political clout to delay the project, but not to stop it. If a piece of unzoned land, unsellable for years, and the regional plan is industrial, cannot have a silent 8.5-foot structure built on it, where can it be built? We have fellow Americans who right now are struggling with eminent domain. For example, our friends in Nebraska are fighting to keep their land from the XL pipeline. Here in Vermont, we have public servants who want to tell people who privately own land that they cannot sell that land to a private company who wants to build a solar array that will produce millions of kilowatt hours of clean solar power. The government dictating that I cannot sell my land and make a profit from a company that wants to create a product that is in the public good, that is a perversion of the marketplace far beyond communism. While in theory I believe in local control, I've seen up close, well, I'll end. Thank you. Very much.
Next is Jerry Mullen, followed by Kate Kroll, and then Charles Johnson.
Good evening. I'm Jerry Mullen. I'm a retired selectman from Bolton. I'm going to change what I was actually originally going to say based on some of the things I've been hearing. I've been convinced for a long, long time that there's such a thing as global warming. I remember, in spite of this cold February we had, I remember a February back in '53 when I couldn't get 2 milk cans out of the cooler because they were frozen in at 43 degrees below zero. I haven't seen a temperature like that in decades. But one of the things that has bothered me, I installed 32 solar panels on my roof a couple of years back, and in fact we did 63 kilowatt hours just yesterday. But what's bothered me is that when we did that, we had to apply to become a power generating station. There were hearings on it. As it turned out, nobody objected, but there were hearings that the neighbors could have come to and objected to. And what I'm hearing from so many people here is that the Public Service Board is letting big agencies come in, private agencies come in and build big, big things without very much supervision. I would hope that the Public Service Board would consider the local power, the local civil power, and the local neighbors when they start permitting these kind of events, or what am I trying to say here, these kind of installations. Okay, thank you.
Next is Kate Kroll, followed by Charles Johnson, and then Lincoln Land.
Hi, I'm Kate Kroll, and I'm proud to call Vermont my home. The University of Vermont and its strong environmental program drew me to Vermont in the first place, and the beauty of Vermont and the character of its people caused me to stay. For me, the two go hand in hand, environment and community. We're a state that cares about ourselves and one another so much that we've chosen to lead the energy revolution and set an example for the rest of the nation to follow while doing so. In going renewable, we are bettering our present and our future. This takes a certain foresight that is missing in a lot of other places. It's the reason I came to Vermont and the reason I couldn't return to where I grew up. I'm from Pennsylvania, where we don't have our energy act together like Vermont does. PA's reliance on dirty energy, namely natural gas, and the extraction process that comes along with it, fracking, is tearing my home state apart. For some perspective, while some Vermonters worry about having to look at solar from their backyard, folks in PA have actual pipelines running through theirs. And if you think it's out of sight, out of mind, you're wrong. I have friends who can't drink their tap water and others who can light theirs on fire. Some have lost land that has been in their family for generations, and other folks can't use their land for agricultural purposes anymore because of the disturbances caused by fracking. So when I think about making the barriers to solar more difficult than they already are in Vermont, I feel very scared. We have to get our energy needs from somewhere, so even ignoring all the overwhelming pros of renewables, we must realize when we distance ourselves from solar, we create a vacuum for another energy field to fill. Again, by making solar more difficult, we're inevitably ushering in dirtier alternatives. I don't want this state to suffer the way Pennsylvania has suffered. We must move toward our goal of 90% renewables by 2050 and away from the consequences of a dirty energy economy, because I care about my backyard and I care about yours too, just like most Vermonters. The time for short-term thinking is over. We're in this together, so let's make our backyards part of the solution and not the problem. Thank you.
Next is Charles Johnson, followed by Lincoln Land, and then Don Toffey.
Thank you. My name is Dr. Charles Johnson from East Montpelier. I'm a big fan of solar. I'm a big opponent of industrial wind on our ridge lines. And that's what I'm going to speak about strictly tonight. If I'm off base, you only have to put up with me for 2 minutes. I'm a scientist by training. I have a PhD in environmental science and a master's degree in wildlife biology. But I want to veer into something else tonight. and it rarely comes up in meetings such as this, and that's the word love. In particular, the love of the land. And I think it is very germane. We usually treat land as a collection of values or bundle of rights, resources that we use. Even Act 250 works this way with its 8 criteria. But land, in my mind, is much more than that. It's part of our cultural memory, our physical foundation, and our personal identity. Love of the land is real if it can't be quantified. It's one of the most basic and universal of all feelings about places that nurture us physically and spiritually from birth to death. It is not a small thing. People go to war over it, give up their lives for it. Many feel that damage to a beloved physical environment is as hurtful as damage to oneself. The loss is felt as keenly. And this is how I feel about industrial wind on our ridgelines. It's a matter of ethics, not a matter of science, and how we relate to the land and how much we can take from it. I'm in favor of renewables, but would like us to follow the eat locally, buy locally model. Get energy locally, use energy locally as much as possible. Solar, wood and cogeneration, small wind, small hydro, efficiency and conservation. I remember the windmills on farms that used to bring water up to our homes and livestock. How in keeping with the setting they were and our way of life. I hope we can keep that image in front of us now, and I hope we'll not be afraid to talk about love. Thank you.
Next is Lincoln Land, followed by Don Toffee, and then Richard Rattico.
Good evening. My name is Lincoln Landy, and I work in Vermont's renewable energy industry, and more specifically, I'm involved in solar installations, primarily with installations above 500 kW. A little bit about myself. I'm from Vermont. I went to school elsewhere for undergrad, came back, went to Vermont Law, got a law degree, and it's really the solar industry that has allowed me to stay in Vermont. I work specifically on siting some of these projects, and I can echo the comments from the gentleman from Duxbury about how challenging it is to site these solar projects. I enjoy my job. I like being in Vermont, and my concern is that we make these projects so onerous that they cannot be built, that we can't find sites, and then unfortunately I'm out of a job. So I would like to stay in Vermont and keep my position there. I am quite familiar with the current process, the Public Service Board as well. Specifically, I assist in preparation of filings at the board to construct some of these installations. I'm also involved in the technical aspect of adjusting some of the layouts with respect to stakeholder concerns. Based on my experiences in the industry and my permitting specific experience, I do support the current process for a number of reasons. First, it does provide the opportunity for local voices to be heard, allows people to get involved in the process, express their concerns, and work towards a solution. Public input has and will continue to modify these proposed projects. Part of my position entails addressing stakeholder concerns, as I already stated. It advances the overall public good for an energy system that we so desperately need and rely on, whether it be for climate change or energy security reasons. If we were to change the process, our ability to meet these state energy goals that we are striving for, which is supported by the majority of Vermonters, could be in jeopardy as well. And I was going to address my comments.
Thank you. Next is Don Toffee, followed by Richard Rattico, and then Henry Fontes. And I apologize for my mispronunciation of some of these names.
Mr. Chairman, I brought these. Thank you very much. These are copies of my testimony. And this is a resolution signed by 37 towns in the state of Vermont. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've shortened these up considerably, and as anyone in this room that knows me knows, for me to finish in 2 minutes would make the Guinness Book of Records. We'll help you. I'm sure you will. And what we're talking about here this evening is a political problem. It's a constitutional problem, and it's one of the most basic of home rule conflicts. The most recent decision on the Coal River Road project in Rutland Town makes it undeniably clear that neither planning commissions nor elected bodies such as select boards have any standing whatsoever in the 248 process as presently constructed. Hundreds of hours of deliberative, thoughtful, and responsive and interactive community planning that has been fostered, indeed required by statewide rules for local and regional bodies, have been trashed and rendered useless by this decision. There are serious consequences of such irresponsible conduct by our own PSB. When any community at the local level takes the planning of local development and the viewsheds of its local citizens seriously enough to develop a clear and consistent statement as required by the Queechee analysis, provision long held as the prevailing standard in the deliberative process, then we have to seriously question just what usefulness is served by having appointed bodies at the state level able to completely override elected officials and all the citizens they represent at the local level who are engaged in community planning. This decision is of great concern to our town and its grand list. Battles have been fought at every level to determine the values of properties and just what impact the viewshed and aesthetics of the neighborhood quality has on those values. It's a well-founded fact that hundreds of thousands of citizens in our state have invested their life's work in properties and homesteads that a great portion of that value is attributed to view, many times a great pastoral, scenic, or forest and field ambiance.
Thank you.
We have your folder right here, and everyone will get a copy, and it'll be up on the website.
Well,
for everyone else.
We are representing 37 other communities in this particular issue, and it's of great significance, and it needs to be, we need to restore local community participation in this as the Constitution requires. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Next is Richard Ratito, followed by Henry Bontes, and then Emily McManamy.
Good evening. My name is Richard Radico. I'm an electrical contractor in Bradford, Vermont, and I've built grid-tied and off-grid electrical systems for 13 years. Grid-tied solar has grown from the rare project in 1999 to the situation today where installations are commonplace. The drivers of this growth have been the demonstrated reliability of solar, the increasing affordability of these systems, the recognition of the threat posed by global warming, and Vermont's enlightened policies. I'm very proud of the role the state, the Public Service Board, our utilities, and our citizens have played in getting us this far. By democratic means, we've established that installed amounts of renewable energy should reach the specific milestones in the not distant future. Our goals are ambitious, as they should be. Since we wish to maintain the momentum we've worked so hard to establish, it is critical we not impose siting standards or other hurdles that could potentially jeopardize our objectives. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. It's pointless to argue over. What to one person looks like a sea of billboards, to others is a well-organized, functionally attractive, non-polluting generator of convenient and critical electrical power. One of the House Energy Committee's members recently said she thought it was a good thing that our generation facilities were visible. That's a profound statement. We have been spoiled by having our power come from plants located far away. If many of our electrical generation facilities are visible, as are our solar farms and wind turbines, perhaps we'll become more frugal and aware. Thank you for your attention.
Next is Henry Bontes, followed by Emily McManamy and Christopher Morris. I could have mispronounced that name, so it's Henry, B-O-N-G-E-S. Nobody? Okay. Next is Emily McManamy.
Hello, thank you for taking the time with us tonight. I am going to be reading a statement on behalf of Vera Blakely from Orwell. She was unable to make the travel tonight. I was born into the world with oil lamps, well water pumped by hand, and horses for travel. Then the automobile and telephone in every home led to a cell phone in every hand. And now we have electricity from the sun. Watch out, world. I can't believe it. For 26 years, I've lived above a meadow where the sun is always shining. For 26 years, I've had that meadow to myself, and have enjoyed the view. But now, for the first time, that meadow is working for me. I now host a community solar array that allows up to 30 households to benefit from solar for the first time, my house included. I was looking for a way to create a more sustainable, secure future for myself. Suncommon's community solar array program was such an opportunity. They came to my property, and we walked through my meadow, and we talked, and I could see no reason not to go forward with solar. It is my property, after all, and my decision. I'm A-OK with my solar farm. I'm hearing people say we need more jurisdictions about where these arrays are allowed to go. But that might mean people like myself wouldn't be able to have a solar array. You should come to my place and see my array. It's not disturbing anyone. Very much like the big steel barn that was built to my property, my solar array rests quiet and still in my meadow. I'm proud to have found a way to further Vermont's working landscape. I'm happy to be helping my neighbors and fellow Addison County residents benefit from solar. I don't think Vermonters need Montpelier to tell us what we can do with our property, because it's not hurting anyone. We work hard to have what we have. We should be allowed the freedom to use our land to support our own future and Vermont's energy future. I'd hate to see other Vermonters miss out on this wonderful opportunity. Thank you.
Next is Christopher Loris, followed by Kim Freed and Carol Irons.
Hopefully you'll find me on a curve. I forgot my reading glasses.
It's all the same.
Good evening. I'm Christopher Loris, the mayor of the city of Rutland. In its press release announcing this hearing, the public was asked to provide testimony